Hey everybody, my name's Chris Enriquez from the band Spotlights, and I also am from Revolver Magazine. I'm your host on Age of Quarantine. This is another episode tonight. We have Rob Fish from the band 108. He is also in a brand new band called Every Star Has a Story. They have a new record out on Equal Vision Records. And yeah, we are so excited to have him on the show. Everyone, almost everyone at St. Vitus has grown up on New York hardcore and just hardcore in general, and 108 is one of my favorites. And so, I have so many questions for him, and I can't wait to find out about his new band and talk about some of the bands he was in. And yeah, it's going to be cool. I saw 108 when I was in high school. This is a long time ago. This is like probably 25 years ago. And I had never seen anything like them. I had known about Inside Out, and I knew Vic from Inside Out was the guitar player, and he was one of my favorite guitar players at the time. I heard his playing in Shelter, but 108 was way more aggressive, and the Krishna consciousness and the spirituality aspect of it really set it apart and was really intriguing. Looks like Rob is ready to join us, so we're going to get him on the screen right now. Joining us. It's going to be a fun chat. Hey, Rob, how are you?
How are you? Good. How you doing?
Good, good, good. I'm so glad I didn't wear the same shirt tonight. I have that same exact shirt.
That's a good call. We should have coordinated.
Absolutely, absolutely. How have you been managing to get through this insane time?
It's definitely been a bit of a challenge. I run a company here in Arizona where we have basically 68 locations across 10 states where we do massage and skincare as our business. So obviously this has had a huge impact, COVID-19, and then you add in all the other crazy bullshit going on right now, and it's definitely been a hard transition. Every day kind of feels like the same, and you're dealing with so much uncertainty. So it's definitely been interesting for me.
Absolutely. What's the name of the company? If we should try to get the name out there so people can check it out and support.
So I basically own and operate Massage Envy locations. Again, we have 68 across 10 states that we do. I used to work for the corporate Massage Envy company. But then about a little over a year ago, I went and, it started with 20 locations, and over the next 8 months went and bought 48 more locations or 47 more locations. And we've got 68 of them right now across 10 states. So it's definitely been interesting trying to navigate through all this.
I'm sure. Yeah. I mean, I hope that, well, first of all, there's a lot of musicians that watch this. So, we all have back pains and all sorts of issues. So you never know. You might get some clients out of the show. Yeah. Well, this is really amazing. I was just talking about how I saw 108 in high school. I don't want to age you, but this is about 20 years ago. This legendary show at the Pipeline. And I think that was with VOD, maybe?
Yeah, that sounds about right. I don't think we played the Pipeline very often. So the show I remember, I want to say it was like VOD and maybe 25 to Life or something.
Right, right.
And I think it was right after Kate had left 108, if I remember correct. But it all kind of runs together at this point.
Where are you originally from?
Originally from New Jersey, so Edison, New Jersey. So I grew up there, stayed there for my first basically 17 years. Went to school with Ari Katz from Lifetime. Him and I were really, really close, and we had a whole crew of just like hardcore kids at our school. And then I lived in Philly for a little while before I moved to New York City, and I lived in New York City until 2001, I think February of 2001, and then I moved out west, and I've lived in Oakland, Portland, Oregon, and now in Scottsdale, Arizona.
Wow, you bounced around, huh?
Yeah.
And it's got to, at a certain point, I'm born and raised in New York, and I stayed here, but from traveling, I know, and talking to people who have left, it's just got to be such a cool thing to have. Arizona, it's so different. You have like the open air and nature and all that. Back in the day, when you were in Jersey, how did you first discover aggressive music and underground stuff?
Yeah, I mean, music for me, I mean, as a young kid, it was my mother listened to Janis Joplin and the Beatles, and she listened to all the sadder stuff. Um, and I think it was probably, late 79 or early 80, I got really into hip hop, and that's all I listened to until I got to high school. And my first day of high school, there was this kid that I had known years before, I hadn't seen in years. And first day we were in like wood shop class or some shit like that, some type of shop class. And, I was a hip hop kid. He was a metal kid. And we were just talking, and I was talking about, we're just talking about like what attracted us to the music we were listening to. And he's like, hey, I got to give you this tape, and you've got to listen to it. It's going to change your fucking life. And it was Black Flag, first 4 years. Everything Went Black. And he was right. Like, it just completely, I mean, I still have always loved hip hop, and that will always be something that's close to me. But that definitely, drew me into punk and hardcore. And I'd heard stuff before, it just didn't connect for whatever reason. But that in particular, hearing Ron Reyes, that record's really cool because you've got a lot of the same songs, but by the different singers. And something about his voice, like the desperation and emotion to it, really just like, I still to this day, I hear those songs and I'm like, fuck, like this.
Yeah. He doesn't get talked about enough. I mean, he had a very unique thing going on.
Yeah. So I just I love that. And like I said, I think in my high school, we just had a lot of like punk and hardcore kids. And, Mike Valley went to my school, professional skateboarder. He was 2 years older than us. But we had like quite a crew of like, just like punk and hardcore kids there. And, very quickly we just all started, I remember, I think it was early 86 when I was starting my sophomore year of high school. And I picked a small straw. So I had to be the one that would take home economics class. And the reason that was important is that everybody had to give me copies of their birth certificate so I could make 2 or 3 copies of each and then go into typing class and forge them so we could all get into CBs. So that was like the thing, right? Like I basically made everybody 3 copies of a birth certificate. We quizzed each other on the train up to the city. And that was it, man. I was completely hooked. That's all I cared about was skating and really more, punk and hardcore music.
Right.
Skating was kind of the mode of transportation. But that was it. Like I was 15 when I started my first band. I went on my first tour at 16, and that was kind of it.
Well, before we get into that, I want to ask a little bit about the hip hop stuff. Who are your favorite hip hop artists at the time?
Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five was like absolutely like I just adored them, and I was really drawn in by them. Run DMC, I fucking love them. Eric B and Rakim. I mean, there was just at that time there was so much. Like every Saturday night, Friday night, Saturday night, get your tape player ready, record shit all night. DJ Red Alert, all these other people, and just record it and listen to it, and just was really just that was like my first love.
Right, that's awesome. Did you ever think about being an MC, or that never crossed your mind?
No.
You didn't want to?
No, I did. But breakdancing was about as far as I got, and even that was somewhat limited. But no, I just for some reason I connected to it. Like I loved that. I love the aspect of their ability to just express themselves, and it wasn't about being commercial, and they weren't worried about the radio. And I think when that really started to take off was around the time I got into punk rock, right? Like 85, that's when,
Wow.
Beastie Boys started to blow up and all these other groups started to blow up. And, again, I've always remained and still, listen to hip hop and love it, but punk definitely drew me in, and that was that.
Yeah, no, it's all kind of started at the same time, and it's all street music. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, and then you were saying your first band was your first band Resurrection?
No, my first band was this band, not a good band, but it was called Release.
Okay.
We put out 3 7-inches during our time, and we were supposed to go on a full U.S. tour with Vision in 1989. It was booked by Johnny Stiff, and
Johnny Stiff.
Days before we left, something happened, and basically most of it got canceled. So we went out, did a bunch of shows at Vision, and we just fucking drove around. That summer, everybody was on tour. If you look at, I think that same summer, that same summer, like at Fender's Ballroom in California, like everybody played. You had Judge, Grill Biscuits, Youth Today, everybody was on tour at that time. So we went out, we had bought a van, barely. And we were just like, fuck it. Like, we'll play those shows. And then we're just going to we went all the way out to Cleveland, Detroit, down to Florida, and just jumped on shows and played. And it was awesome.
What was the New York hardcore connection for you when you started getting involved in that scene?
Yeah, I mean, I think 86 is when we started going to shows there. Like I said, I kind of had to bake everybody's birth certificates. And, that was that. At that point then, like every weekend, between there, City Gardens in Trenton, New Jersey, Middlesex County College in Edison, New Jersey actually did some shows. COC played there. Husker Du played at like Rutgers. But then we just started going to New York, and we had a few older friends. So sometimes we'd go up to the Anthrax, stuff like that. But, definitely every weekend the ritual was, everybody was sleeping at someone's house, but yet no one slept at anybody's house. So we could all just go into the city and, all of us just fell in love with it. Like I loved it.
It's a magical time. I'm going to take I usually don't take questions this early, but we got a few, so I'll take them now. Terrence Nail wants to know, was Rob in Kill the Messenger also? No. You were not.
Kill the Messenger, I want to say was two of the guys from Outspoken, Dennis Remzig and John Coyle. They were a Southern California band, okay. I think that's the Kill the Messenger I remember. I think there was also one in Philly, but I was not in that one either.
Yeah. No, that's okay. There you go, man. And then we'll take some more later. I just didn't want to forget about him while we had his question early on.
Sure.
So at what point does Resurrection start, and how did that come together?
Yeah, so I did release. I was a fucked up kid, and when I was in Release, I didn't really. I probably wrote one or two of the songs. That was it. Most of it was written by other people in the band, and I was just a crazy singer. And then, when that band stopped, I ended up moving into a Hare Krishna temple right after graduating high school. This is in 1990. Release ended, and my mother had been sick for years leading up to that point, and she passed away in January of 91. And so I left the temple and I came home, and at that point, that band Release that I was in, a bunch of the songs that got it got released on an EP that came out after we broke up. And I was sitting in a room with Ari and Dan Yeaman from Lifetime in Ari's room, apartment in Edison. And that's when I got the record. So we heard it for the first time, and they're like, fuck, we gotta do a band. And I was like, I don't know. And they're like, yeah. So the initial Resurrection was Dan Yeaman and Ari from Lifetime and me. And then I called Chris Zuzai, who had played guitar in Release and later went on, did like Floor Punch and stuff like that. Had him join, and then we had a bunch of different people from New Jersey in the band. But that's really kind of what prompted it, and that was really the first time that I started writing songs myself. Like I said, I think of Release, I maybe wrote 2 or 3 songs.
Right.
But I was a really troubled kid, and music was like my emotional outlet, but I didn't know how to express it at all, and I wasn't ready. I didn't express probably the deepest part of my problems until much later in life. I just didn't know how to do it, but those guys, for whatever reason, Dan Hornacker was in the band too. They just, I don't know what it was, but it made me feel safe to be able to start to express things that I hadn't before. And it was wild. I mean, Lifetime practiced in my garage, or my dad's garage. Resurrection practiced there. Lifetime, or Mouthpiece spent a lot of time there. So like my house was always like, basically Mouthpiece, Lifetime, and Resurrection hanging out there. And then, we went on a tour. We both put out records on New Age, Lifetime, and Resurrection. Went on a tour around the U.S. in 92. And then after that, at that point, my dad had sold the house. My mother had passed away a few years before. My dad sold the house, and that's when I ended up making my way to New York and living there.
Well, I want to talk about that too, and the Hare Krishna temple and everything. There's a lot of stuff there, but I just wanted to just point out how interesting and fascinating it is that you came up with the Lifetime guys. One of my favorite bands, by the way, and we actually want to get unbelievable. We want to get Ari or Dan on the show, so I might hit you up about that at some point to connect with those guys. But I just like the directions he took because Lifetime and 108 couldn't be more different. You know what I mean?
Well, it's funny because I'll tell you a funny story about Lifetime too. It was around that time that it was before. So I was living in the Christian temple, but my mother was really sick, so I would come home sometimes on weekends. And one day I went to this record store called Vintage Vinyl, which is in New Jersey, and I saw a flyer where a guy, where someone was like, "Hey, I want to start a band looking for a vocalist, verbal assault, dag nasty," and I pulled it off, and I called it. It was Dan Yeaman, and so him and I hooked up. He gave me a tape of some songs, and I listened to them, and I really liked them, but it wasn't really like my thing, and so I happened to go down to hang out with this guy Binky or Rob Ryan, who's like now a pretty famous tattoo artist down in I think he's in Asbury Park, but he used to live in Point Pleasant. And I went down to hang out with him, and we were hanging out on the boardwalk. And Ari happened to come up, and Ari and I were really, really close. But we had a period of time, and I'd say probably about 6 or 8 months, where we didn't really hang out very much. And anyway, I happened to bump into him, and he mentions to me like, "Hey, I really want to start a band. I want to sing in a band." Because at that time he was just a drummer. He had played drums in a band called Enough, and then Up Front. And so I was like, yeah. And I was like, well, what do you want it to sound like? He's like, I want to do something heavy but like melodic, right? And I was like, shit, you got to check out this thing. And I actually had Dan's number, like part of the flyer on it, and I gave it to him, and that was how Lifetime started.
Wow.
And then when I ended up moving home, that's when they ended up coming and starting practicing in my house, and that's how kind of all that started. But
so you're indirectly responsible for all of this.
I'm one of them, yeah.
All this weird emo pop punk stuff that got huge because of them.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely love Lifetime. Like I still remember 108 was on a tour in Europe in 1995, and we were touring this band Abhinanda, and the singer just got the new Lifetime record, Jersey's Best Answers, and I hadn't heard it yet because at that time 108 was touring all the time. I lived in New York, so I didn't see Ari that much, but we would play shows, like we would have them come play shows with us or vice versa. And when I heard that record, I fucking cried.
Wow.
And I listened to it for the majority of that tour because I was so proud that like people I knew had gone and written that. Like it was really, really powerful for me.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, all of you guys did legendary stuff. It was a special time. What everybody was doing in your community, 108, Shelter, Lifetime, Texas the Reason. Like there was just so much shit happening.
Yeah.
Now, the Hare Krishna consciousness came, I guess, around the same time or before Resurrection. How did you end up kind of finding Hare Krishna? And are you still practicing today?
So without getting too heavy about it, I had a rough childhood in the sense that I always felt very disconnected from my surroundings, family and everything. And at one point I was sexually assaulted over a period of time. And it made someone who already felt very alienated, it completely like wrecked me. And I started, my interest in Eastern religion was driven by the fact that as a young kid, I couldn't figure out like why this happened to me. Like, why me? Why did I get, why did this happen to me? Why do I feel so disconnected? Why would someone abuse me like this? And the idea of karma, that concept, drew me in. And I think it was this guy Kane who played bass in Four Walls Falling, the band in Virginia. They came up, and I remember I went with them when they recorded their 7-inch for Action Pack Records because Release was on the same label. And anyway, he gave me a book because I think I had at that point not told anybody about being sexually abused, but I think I talked about karma, and for whatever reason, he gave me a book. I read it. Krishna for me, religion for me, was always more about trying to figure that out, trying to find a sense of belonging and an explanation for all of it. I've never been like a God person, right? Like I was never out there just distributing books and, living that type of life. But to be perfectly honest, I wouldn't have survived without that type of community, something that I could kind of join in on. So it's kind of funny. Like I reflect back and I think about people who say, oh, well, you know, back then especially, right? Like you're just doing it because you're afraid. Yeah, I was pretty fucked up. And so it gave me a sense of grounding. It gave me a sense of purpose, but I never really kind of fit in with it. Because again, like I've always been the type of person that if I philosophically can see something that I connect with, great. I'll take that and I'll use that to the best of my ability. The other stuff, if it doesn't connect with me, I just don't worry about it.
Yeah.
So that was really, you know, kind of the thing. So it's funny because if you read Resurrection's first 7-inch, right, there were songs on there that sounded anti-religious because in most respects, I always was kind of that feeling, but more from the idea that religion or philosophy or whatever you choose or whatever you get into, like take from it what is helpful for you and what is healthy for you, but don't worry about the rest of the shit. Right. And I don't know that I articulated it that way back then because I didn't know how to be perfectly honest, but that was really kind of my draw in. So I lived in a temple, but I was always kind of like the weird guy there because like I said, I focused on the meditation parts. Yeah. And I focused on certain aspects like karma, but I never read the Bhagavad Gita and went, oh my God, guys, 5,000 years ago, this happened. Like that wasn't what I needed and it wasn't how I connected to it. But it definitely, I wouldn't be here today if I didn't have it. And there are still aspects of it that I absolutely like love and adore and are core to my being. And I wouldn't say it's radically different than it was back then. I could just articulate it more. So even like with 108, you know, the songs that we play are songs that we all feel like we can embrace and have deep meaning to us, and songs that we don't, we just didn't bother with.
Right. That's interesting. It's very, very interesting. And I can relate. I think anybody could relate to, you know, to kind of, you take what you need from something when you're going through a tough time. I mean, I absolutely, as punk rock and hardcore people, I think that we all have had that part of our lives where we needed something. And that really isn't that different from what you just described. You know, you could, like, I felt like a misfit because I was kind of fucked with, whether it was racially driven or whatever, in my town. And the music community, you know, growing up on metal, but then finding punk and hardcore, then I realized there's a community for me. Sounds like the Krishna temple, in a way, did that for you on a deeper level, without necessarily, like you said, diving completely in and being the guy on the street sort of trying to convert everybody and whatnot.
Yeah, but it was funny because even like, I think that's how Vic and I really bonded, because he was also sort of an outsider. I think he was a lot more drawn to the entirety of the philosophy, but we both had a lot of bones to pick with certain aspects of it, and that's how we kind of bonded. And there was even a point where I joined 108, and then I quit because I just felt like, God, like I can't get sucked into the whole being of the Hare Krishna thing. You know, I felt like I either got to be fully in or fully out. And he was like, no, like, let's talk about the things that we all believe in and we can align with, and the other shit, I fucking worry about it. And so that's kind of how how him and I connected, and you know, allowed me to kind of process through that.
Yeah. No, I was going to ask you too. And that makes a lot of sense in terms of how you guys connected, obviously, and decided to become 108. But how did you meet exactly?
You know, he wrote me a letter when he was still in Inside Out and I was in Release, because I had spoken in an interview about karma and about Krishna. And this was probably, like I said, 88 or 89, probably early 89. And then what happened was I was living in the Philadelphia temple. It's kind of a funny story, actually. There was, like, at one point, again, like I lived there, but I would kind of go and do other stuff. And so I remember Shelter, Inside Out, and Quicksand were doing a bunch of shows. They were playing the Anthrax, City Gardens, all that stuff. And Prong was playing in Tampa.
Okay.
And me and the drummer from Release were like, fuck, go and see Inside Out and fucking Shelter. Let's go to fucking Florida and see Prong. But anyway, like, I got back and I was still living in a temple. And when the Shelter tour ended, one day there's just some devotee comes up. He's like, hey, someone wants to talk to you on the phone. And I go to the phone and it's like Ray Capo. And I knew Ray and I had met and talked before. And he's like, yeah, we're moving to Philadelphia. And so they moved there, and Vic and I and a bunch of other people in Shelter ended up being kind of roommates.
Wow.
But again, like I was definitely kind of the black sheep. I was just a weird kid, and I was very withdrawn, and I wasn't going to put on saffron robes and do all this stuff. But Vic and I, for whatever reason, like really hit it off.
Right.
And then later on down the line, when 108 Resurrection was playing a show, it was like Resurrection, Lifetime, No Escape, Worlds Collide, and Chuck Treese in Atlantic City.
Wow.
And Vic came up with Worlds Collide, and 108 played a few songs because it was basically like a guy from Worlds Collide, Vic, and this guy Jay. And so he saw Resurrection play, I saw 108, and then the next day he called me and just said, hey, we kicked the singer out, why don't you join?
Who was singing in the band at the time? I didn't even know that.
His name was Jay. I mean, they literally did 3 songs at a show. That was it.
Okay.
So,
and Vic obviously named the band.
Yes. Yeah. So his name was Jay. He was a DC guy. He played in this band called Fed Up in the mid '80s. That guy Kane from Farwell Spalding played in. But anyway, for whatever reason, it wasn't working out. So that's how Vic came to me and said, "Hey, I want you to join." And it took a little while for me to feel comfortable, but by 1993, we decided, fuck it, let's just do it, and that was that.
Yeah, I mean, Jesus, the combo of you two is unbelievable. I mean, you've gone through different members, but I don't want to like dictate your feeling, but to me, it's just some fucking furious anger, dude. It's just unrelentless, and his guitar playing is just. I've said this for a long time, and I have a lot of friends, particularly in New York, that feel the same way. But his guitar playing is like so underrated in the grand scheme of the hardcore punk rock thing. Like he should be up there with Dr. No. I mean, it's just his riff.
Yeah, the thing that's pretty incredible about Vic is that he doesn't really play the guitar unless it's easy to play a show.
Right.
Like he's just one of those. I mean, I've been surrounded by these people in my life, whether it's Vic or Norm from Texas, like these people who like, they're so fucking talented at everything they do. Like it's effortless, where for me, I'm not very talented at anything. So I have to work really hard for anything I have. And it's funny that I surround myself sometimes with these people who I'm just like, my God, like they could do anything with like little to no effort. But I always, look, Vic and I are very different personalities, but we've always kind of hit it off in a lot of ways. And I just love and appreciate the guy. Yeah.
Well, there's so much stuff to cover. People are asking some questions finally, and I'll do my best, but I feel like we're a little behind, and I might sort of try to get through a few things, but
yeah,
I'll start. Let's just talk about this real quick. Stylistically, because people talk about 108, they talk about Hare Krishna core, whatever. But as a band, musically, it's very aggressive. It's very different. It's very unique. I hear a little bit of Black Flag. I hear a little Bad Brains. Certain eras for sure. But did you guys ever sit and talk about like what you were going for initially?
No, we didn't. I mean, the Bad Brains thing is definitely true. That is like Vic loves the fuck. I mean, I like the Bad Brains. There are certain albums I really love. There are certain parts of the Bad Brains that didn't really resonate with me. But yes, as a band, like musically, unbelievable. I was the Black Flag guy. Like I liked noisy, heavy, like Black Flag, Rollins Band, like noisy.
I can see that.
A lot of like what Resurrection was kind of like,
and Judas Factor too.
Yeah. But like when Triv, our bass player, joined 108, that's when I think we started to sound a little bit more of a cross between Vic, Triv, and I, because I think Triv was a lot like me, Black Flag, Rollins Band, like heavier, noisier. But I just we never really had those conversations. We never had those conversations. But Vic was really prolific, and so there were just a lot of songs that like maybe I didn't like, so we just wouldn't do. Or we just never recorded. But I think even for 108, like the first 108 song I ever wrote lyrically was Curse of Instinct, which was like one of the last songs before we broke up. But I think obviously I had an influence in the sound, but Vic was the primary writer up until that point. And then, once we got back together, it was definitely a little bit more all of us.
We'll take a couple comments for some people and some questions. And I love what you mentioned about Triv, because I noticed that too. That was a little later in the band's career, but the combo at that point, like you said, very noisy and just fucking dirty bass playing, and you really kind of came into it gelled. It really gelled. Terrence Meal is giving a shout out to Triv. Triv is such a talented bass player.
Unreal.
He's also saying, how do you view, Terrence Meal wants to know, how do you view the 108 documentary? I don't know if he's saying, how do you feel about it, or where can we see it? Maybe.
Yeah, I can't watch it. I'll just say again, without making it too much, that whole period of my life, that first go around, was not good for me at all. I battled depression really, really hard. I mean, there were points where on tour, 2 to 3 times a week, they'd have to take me to the hospital because I would get these incredibly horrible migraines that were all like mental and emotional. Some of it was I've gotten a lot of concussions, but it was a very dark period of my life. So I can't watch that documentary. I can't watch stuff from back then. It's too, there's too much emotion to it.
I think that's a testament to why the music really resonates with a lot of people, and why it still means something today, because the feeling is so genuine when you listen to those records. And we all obviously came up in the scene where we needed that. So what do you have a favorite 108 album?
I mean, I think Threefold Misery, I love that record. Curse of Instinct, I really like. A New Beat, I really liked. I mean, as a total record, I'd probably say Threefold Misery. Okay. But I definitely love A New Beat from a Dead Heart, Curse of Instinct, Songs of Separation. I mean, Holy Name's the one that probably I like a couple. That's probably my least favorite.
Okay.
And I love parts of it.
Okay. Yeah. No. I mean, they're all, and the evolution of the band went in a lot of different directions. So I'm sure it's always hard for the artist to kind of look at their own material and kind of figure that out. But I was wondering, just because again, the catalog is so vast and went through so many different changes. I'll take one more question here, and then I'll get back to mine. But Luis Fernando, it's a long name. Rob, what about your soccer passion? He says you're the Hare Krishna punk goalkeeper.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was after our first 108 tour, where I spent a little time after the tour in Europe, and I got to see my first soccer match, which was Man United versus Manchester City. At the time, you were supposed to love Man United. They were like the best team ever. The person that brought me was a Man United fan, but we were probably, 10 seats away from the City fans, and City got beat 5-0. It was bloody. But something about how the way that they interacted with United fans, I just thought it was fucking awesome. For whatever reason, Manchester reminded me of New York City.
I could see that.
To like something like London. So I just really ended up falling in love with Manchester City and kind of following them. And, as soccer started to gain a foothold here, European soccer started to do a foothold here, I got to see it more. But, it's funny, like the bands that I liked from Manchester, whether you're talking about like the Smiths, for example, I liked the Smiths, but I hated Morrissey. But I thought the music was pretty awesome. And so, you had Morrissey, who was like the United guy, and Johnny Marr was a City guy. And, Stone Roses, Oasis, bands like that, Joy Division, where, when I would back then read about them, like singer from Joy Division, like Man City, whatever, so just things like that drew me in. And then, later in life, I played soccer and I was a goalkeeper. So I don't know. I guess that's it.
Pizza Eater 201, I see your question. I will get to it. Rob, I'm going to, for the next 10 minutes, just so I could stick to some kind of time frame and get to your current band and what you're doing today, Every Scar Has a Story on Equal Vision Records. We'll get to that at in about 10 minutes before we kind of go to the home stretch. But 108 Judas Factor, I want to kind of stay there for a little bit. Mike Justin from Madball's in your band. He's the drummer. I was always curious as a drummer, how'd you guys link up with him?
Triv, the Boston connection. And I remember we played a show, I think it was like Trash Talk 108 and Converge. And Mike was there and he introduced me to him. And at the time he had a different drummer, and Triv was like, we have to have Mike join us at some point. And a few months later, we didn't have a drummer, and so Mike did, and it's been that ever since. So,
okay.
Our drummer at the time left the band. We went and did his tour in South America. And Alan Cage came and played on that tour for us.
I love Alan. Good friend of mine. Yeah, he's the best.
Oh, God. Unreal. Like, unbelievable. It was really funny because all he did was do online poker.
Yeah.
He was a lot of fun, a phenomenal drummer. And then when we got back, we jammed with Mike, and that was that. We kind of knew, like, yeah, this is going to work.
Awesome. Yeah, he's a great drummer. I just, it was so, like, not random, but it was like, I saw you guys with him, and I'm like, is that the guy from Madball? So it's kind of interesting.
I want to say when he first joined 108, I don't think he was in Madball yet. I think that came later.
Okay.
I think he played, I think he actually played with Earth Crisis for a little while too.
Oh, interesting.
But yeah, Mike's, I've been lucky. I've played with some of the best fucking drummers in the hardcore scene.
Chris
some of the
Daly,
best, right?
Yeah.
You got Daly, you got Mike Paradise, you got Alan.
Right.
I mean, just, Mike, I mean, fuck. Like, I've played with some amazing drummers.
Yeah,
which is
important.
Let
everyone know.
That's like the instrument that's most important to me.
Okay. Well, yeah, I'll let everyone know. I mean, so we're talking about Alan Cage from Quicksand, Chris Daly from Texas, The Reason, and Jets to Brazil. And then you had Mike from Madball. You have drummers from every, like, area of underground music.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. A fan had hit me up before this and suggested some questions that were really good that I'm going to ask. Is it true? We're talking about drummers now. Is it true that Harley Flanagan was supposed to play drums on Threefold Misery?
So we had a period where we didn't have a drummer. We had a show coming up, and we had tried to record Threefold Misery with a drummer that was in the band, and it just didn't work. We had to cut the session short. We went on a tour of Europe and ended up separating with them there. And when we came back, Triv, first we had dinner with John from Helmet.
John Spanier, yeah. He watches the show a lot. He's been on the show.
So he really wanted John to play on it, but I don't think timing would have ever worked. And then he was like, hey, I want Harley to play. And I was like, yeah, you're fucking out of your mind. And anyway, it's an incredible story, but it's a pretty long one. But I'll just say that I showed up to the practice space, and Harley was playing drums, and it sounded fucking phenomenal.
Wow.
And he had, like, no shirt on, long hair. He's just playing, looked like Animal. He's screaming on the top of his lungs. And it was like, I mean, this guy, seriously, from a musician standpoint, you can't fuck with him. Like,
of course. Everyone knows that. Yeah.
And it was funny because at one point we were talking about, we were going to play this other next song. And he pulls out this boom box, and it's like one of those little, like, Fisher Price boom boxes with, like, for, like, little kids with, like, the color knobs and, like, the fake microphone. And he pulls it out, and he starts playing the song. And he stops it midway, and he's like, why the hell did you kick out this drummer? Like, he's amazing.
Yeah.
And we're like, yeah, that's a drum machine. And he just, like, was like, you guys suck. Like, why didn't you tell me that? I've been trying to, like, learn these songs by playing it. Anyway, he sounded phenomenal. It just wasn't going to happen. And at that time, I was, friendly with Matt Cross. And so I asked him if he would, join us for the record, and he did. And that was that.
That's unbelievable. That's just fucking crazy shit, man.
Yeah.
Okay. And then let's see. This is another question that was submitted. And I don't know if this is something you're comfortable talking about, but is it true that there was some beef with Choke from Slapshot and that there's a 108 song written about that?
There's a 108 song that Slapshot did, but I think 108 was it rhymed easier than Shelter. Because I had never really had met Choke or interacted. I mean, I've seen them play a million times. No, I remember we played a show in Philly after we got back together, or sorry, in Florida, and Slapshot was playing with it. It was a fest, and it was 108 and Slapshot, and everybody's like, "Oh my God, there's going to be drama." That shit just doesn't fucking exist. Like, no one says anything to each other. Like, it was funny. I remember, especially on that 1993 Shelter 108 tour, we played a bunch of shows like Rorschach and Ass Suck and Not for the Lack of Trying, which was some people from Downcast, and all these bands, and people expected like you're going to show up and there's going to be this like intense,
right, like it's like a fucking WWF match.
Like, for example, like we would go out, like some of us would go out and get a bite to eat together. Like there was no fucking, we didn't necessarily agree on everything, but there was no like animosity or fucking beef, like a bunch of bullshit.
Right.
So it didn't exist. I mean, I was very unapologetic about the things that I was doing. So were they, but we all had known each other forever, and the reality was like, it just that shit didn't exist. So yeah, so a Slapshot song called 108. I don't think it really had, he didn't know any of us. I think it just rhymed easier.
Okay.
108 rhymes with hate way better than Shelter. So
there you go. So we'll talk about Judas Factor for a second. How did Judas Factor come together? Because that was a really interesting band with you and Justin Brannon from Indecision, who's now a councilman, also of Most Precious Blood. Talk about that record a little bit.
Yeah, I don't remember how it kind of started, to be perfectly honest, but it was Pat from Indecision, Justin, Chris Zuzai, who played in Release and Resurrection and Floor Punch. And essentially that was where like my life had really like hit rock bottom. But at the same time, I was ready to kind of start talking about the shit that I'd gone through. And at one point, Justin had asked, because they were parting ways with the Indecision singer, if I wanted to join Indecision. And I just didn't want to. I wanted to do Judas Factor. So we kind of separated with him. And Chad from Threadbare joined. This guy, Justin, who does Little Punk People from New Jersey, he joined. Little Dave, who was in Resurrection, he was in the Judas Factor. And I connected with a friend of mine, Jason, another phenomenal drummer from down in Florida. He came up and did the record with us, the Ballads of Blue China record. And I'll say that record is probably the closest to my heart in that I bared everything on that record.
Yeah.
So it was really important to me in being able to get past, maybe not get past, but to heal some of the things. But it's also because of that it was a short-lived band, because I can't play those songs.
Right.
There's too much. It's too hard emotionally. But it was short-lived, but it was really, really cool. I love that record. And I love the people who helped me, do that, because it really did help me over the next, 10 years rethink and change my life. And that was needed because I wasn't going to make it otherwise.
That's a fantastic record. And if it's, I don't know if it's still on, if it's on streaming, but it came out on Wreckage or Exit. And I highly suggest that everyone check it out.
The first 7-inch came out on Wreckage. And then the album, which is the one that I'm kind of referring to as like the one that was like the closest to me, that was on Revelation.
Oh, it was on Revelation. I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah. It was called Ballads in Blue China.
Okay, so that should be available for people to check out. All right, let's get up to speed while we get to the home stretch here. So you're in a new band on Equal Vision Records, which of course is the label that you guys started out on when you were with 108, and the band is called Every Scar Has a Story. Talk about the band, who's in it, how did it come together, what can we expect?
Yeah, so Thomas Robert is a guy guitar player, played in a band in New Jersey called You and I guess kind of like a screamo band. I don't know.
I used to play shows with those guys a lot.
Yeah. And he ended up being in a band called Black Kites, and probably 10 years ago, 108 was doing a bunch of shows in New York. We did I can't remember the name of the place in Manhattan, Cake Shop. And then we did a show later on that night in Brooklyn, and Black Kites played. And him and I just talked for a while, and just sweetest, nicest guy. And a few years after that, we played a few more shows together. And then he sent me this demo really nothing like Every Scar has a story, but he sent me this demo that I thought was like phenomenal. And it was for me to sing on. And I ended up not doing it because, look, I'm not a writer in your traditional sense. Like music, if I'm going to write music, I have to be in a pretty dark place, or I have to be struggling through some things. And at that point in my life, I just wasn't. Right. So I ended up not doing anything with it. And then, but I kind of followed him after that. And then back in March, he posted like a 20-second clip of something he was working on. And I sent him a message and said, hey, if you don't have anybody to sing on it, like, I'd love to try it. And he sent me the songs, and a week later, I'd already closed down all my businesses, so my offices were closed. But I set up a little studio in my offices, sang on the songs, and that was that.
Oh wow! So you did that recently?
Yeah. I mean, on March the 15th, March 15th, this didn't exist. This wasn't even an idea.
No shit. That's crazy.
So it really, it was a matter of 3 weeks between when I first set them up and the songs were already recorded. And we sent it to a few labels. Equal Vision was one. And, we had a bunch of people say, hey, I'd love to put it out. And we ended up just working with Equal Vision because of my history with them.
Right. They're pretty big now.
Yeah, but it was really just him and I. We've kind of identified people that we want to be in the band because we do expect to play and want to do more. So you need a real band to do that. So we've identified some people, but can't really jam with anybody at this point. So, and also I live in Arizona. So at some point we'll get together, but we kind of figured out who will be in the band, I think, at this point. And I'm looking forward to us being able to continue to write songs and do some cool things together.
That's fantastic. And I was telling you via email when you sent it to me, it has it's got a lot of elements of unexpected stuff for a 108 fan. I actually hear a little DC, like a little disco, like early, like late 80s Discord vibes. But also kind of like some post rock, which I know is kind of a weird term. I don't, but yeah, anyway, it's really interesting. It's really unique. It's not what I expected. I really like the EP, and it's out. It's out on streaming right now, I think. So
it came out today streaming, and then they have a pre-sale package where if people want to buy it. It's coming out as a 10-inch EP. All the songs on one side, a screen print on the other, and we're donating all the proceeds to charity. Charities that are important to Tom and I. And yeah, I'm excited about it. I mean, it was, like I said, it's 2 months ago, it wasn't really a thing. 3 months ago, it wasn't really a thing. So it came to fruition really fast. But I'm excited about it. And I liked it because it was different than 108. Like, I don't really want to keep trying to do the same thing. I like to try to do something different. So it was a cool opportunity.
Of course. And also it's a different band, and you're still doing shows with, you played St. Vitus with 108. It was fantastic. I think more than a few times. And for both bands, we obviously don't know what the future holds with live music, but what are you hoping to, are you hoping to get on the road with both bands, and can we expect something from 108 at any point as well?
Yeah, I mean, 108 was supposed to go to Europe, as well as do some East Coast and West Coast shows with a band I won't name, but we talked about them a little bit earlier. That's been put on the back burner because of everything going on. We actually have a few shows set up for Every Scar Has a Story, with Bitter Branches and Be Well. So Tim Singer's new band and Be Well.
Oh, dude, they're great.
Yeah, so we have a few dates potentially set up. We'll have to see if it's, see how things kind of play out, if they can happen, but it would be in November. But yeah, I think, there'll be shows next year with both bands. And, for me, as long as it's fun and we can make it work, then sure. Love to play.
Absolutely. Well, that's awesome. We're all looking forward to that. Like I said, everyone at St. Vitus is a huge 108 fan. In fact, one of the guys that works there, his email address has the numbers 108 in his email address.
It's a great club. Like, I love playing there. Love playing. St. Vitus is awesome.
I remember when the place started, it was kind of a weird time for New York, and there was no more wetlands, no Coney Island, no CBGBs. So it's been great to see how the underground aggressive music culture has sort of built up around it. So
Yeah.
and for bands like 108 and Shelter Shelter was one of the last bands I saw there before the pandemic. So it's cool that those bands are recognizing what's happening here, and and it's working out for everybody. Now, I always ask everyone the same question because we've all been stuck at home for so long, and I'm wondering if you had to name. I'm gonna increase the number. I usually ask for 5, but we have 10 minutes here to talk. If you had 10 records that you could keep, all right, you're stuck and you only can keep 10 records. What are they and why?
Fuck. 10 records. I'll say Let It Be by the Beatles.
Okay.
I'll say The Message by Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five. I'll say Everything Went Black by Black Flag.
It's 3.
Fuck. Let me think. God, 10's hard.
Let's go with 5.
I'm gonna say. No, I'll say Run the Jewels 4. I fucking love that record.
How good is that?
I love every one of their records. But that record is just I just wrote this thing that's coming out about the 5 heaviest records, and that's one of the ones for me.
It's ridiculous. Yeah.
I would say the first Band of Horses record. I would say the first Iron and Wine record. The first 2 Oasis records.
Oh yeah, we talked about that online. That was an amazing documentary. So ridiculous.
Yeah. So I don't know how many records that is now.
No, you got 2 more left. You got 2 more left.
2 more left. I'll say Jersey's Best Dancers by Lifetime.
Fuck yeah. Oh yeah.
Different records every fucking time. But I think just again for me, like thinking about emotionally what those records mean to me, that's my off the top of my head list.
That's a great list, yeah. And I could tell you're a big Beatles fan because you also mentioned Oasis, and I think Garrett from Texas the Reason liked Oasis a lot. Interesting to know that you're into a lot of melody, but you know what? I guess it's like assuming that Henry Rollins just sits around listening to hardcore all day, which he obviously does not. So it's cool to get your kind of your musical horizon.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think. I don't think I've really listened to heavy music as like a primary thing since the late 80s.
Yeah.
Since then, it's mostly been mellower stuff, but how I express myself is typically in heavier music. And I mean, God, I mean, Kiss It Goodbye was a great band. Dead Guy.
Oh my God, unbelievable.
Dillinger Escape Plan, Converge. Like I can name a ton of heavy bands that I think are just phenomenal. But I probably do like a lot, like more softer and hip hop and just stuff a little bit different than bands sound like.
Do you have a personal connection with Run the Jewels in terms? Somebody had mentioned something about that.
Yeah, I do. I've done some work with Mike and his business called the Swag Shop. So I helped him open up a barbershop with partnership with the Atlanta Hawks. Okay. And, I've remained friends with him, and I think he is one of the most genuine, amazing people I've ever had to encounter. I love the guy. Musician as well as a person. We have some connection.
We're trying to get LP on the show. Actually, his wife is on a comedy.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah. So we're hoping through some connection. I know the guy at the label that works with them, and then we know his wife, so we're trying to figure it out. But I'm glad you mentioned that. I think it's the most important record that came out so far during a great time. And but anyway, to get back to you, so we have another question while we have some time here. South America seems to have a special affinity and love for 108. Why is that?
I don't know, but I can tell you that we share it. fuck, we went down there and every show was different but phenomenal. Like Chile, Argentina, Chile was, for whatever reason, that I kind of felt like was like almost like a home. Even though we couldn't necessarily talk a lot with people because of language barriers. Just incredible. Argentina was incredible. Brazil, Ecuador. I mean, it was awesome. I love South America. I enjoyed our time there immensely.
Awesome. Well, I love that throughout this conversation, I've been seeing some shout outs from people from different countries. We got a shout out from Mexico City. It's just cool that everybody's been tuning in every night and that we get to speak to our favorite artists. And I want to thank you for joining us and doing this. And I want to also tell everybody again, Every Scar Has a Story, which is Rob's current band, has a new record on Equal Vision Records. Check it out. It's up on streaming now, and you can buy the physical straight from Equal Vision Records. Before we say goodbye, Rob, do you have any final comments or shout outs that you want to throw out there into the world?
Well, I mean, of course, thank you, for inviting me. Obviously, St. Vitus, like I said, amazing club, and I'm glad to see that you guys are getting great support through all this. I'd love for you guys to check out the new record. Like I said, all the proceeds are being donated to causes that I think are important. I think the thing that the thing that really drove this record from my perspective was, because I kind of said earlier, like for me, there has to be a darkness to be able to write something. And, all you have to do is look out your fucking door and see that our country, especially, but to speak of the world, but our country especially, is at a breaking point. And we too often just think about how things impact us and not about how they impact our neighbors or the people across the street, or fuck the people that we may never meet. And, I think we have an opportunity now to work towards righting a lot of wrongs. But that means we've got to, internalize and look at ourselves and the things that we do. And we need to change. And that really drove some of the things that I wrote about on this record. It was before some of the things kind of came to light.
Right.
But that same sense. So check out the record. Again, proceeds are going to go to a really cool cause. And again, thanks for having us. And I can't wait to get out and play both with 108 and Every Scar Has a Story and do more stuff when things clear up a little bit.
Absolutely. And, I don't think we've ever met in person. So hopefully at some point we can do that. And, I have the timer coming down in front of me, but I don't want to ignore the fact that, as you were mentioning, lyrically, you've always had a lot of important things to say. And the banter in between songs has been just as important as the lyrics. So, everybody check out the new record and let's remember that it's all going to a good cause. And Rob, thank you again for putting a lot of positivity into the world and taking your negative stuff and turning it into a positive. It's very inspirational.
I appreciate it. And thank you for having me on and giving us some support. I appreciate it.
All right. Take care, brother.
Right.
I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. You can watch this episode in its entirety on St. Vitus, Instagram, IGTV, and it'll end up on my personal Instagram. If you look up Christopher Enriquez on YouTube, you can follow me at Chris Enriquez Drums. Thanks for tuning in. Stay safe. And, be good to each other. We need to be good to each other right now. Peace out, everybody. Take care.